Hello, everybody. Hope you're doing well. I know it's a weird night. I'm not normally on tonight, but whatever. We're doing Wednesday this week and next week. So many things to talk about. Let me get stuff situated here and we should be good to go. Den is here in the comments helping out with moderation. So if you have questions or comments, leave them in the chat and we will make sure to get to them. And remember, you could support this channel by going to patreon.com/Hemant. And you can go to friendlyatheist.com. You should do that anyway. Okay, give me one moment here and let's get started. All right. I assume, like many of many of you watched the Super Bowl, and without getting into all the Bad Bunny controversy and anything like that, I believe in the fourth quarter, you may have seen a 1-minute ad promoting Jesus. And this was part of something called the He Gets Us campaign that's been going on for 4 years now. And I wish I could play the clip for you on here, but I genuinely think if I play even a portion of it, they're going to smack this channel down. But basically, 1-minute ad during the Super Bowl probably runs for an estimated $16 million, which makes you wonder, like, what the hell are they trying to sell you that is worth $16 million? And this particular ad had a bunch of scenes where people wanted more. They had a girl with dolls surrounding her in her room. They had, some Wall Street banker saying, I want more money, whatever it is. And at the end of it was this image right here. It's a dude just walking in nature. There's more to life than more. And then this. What if Jesus shows us how to find it? And then the slogan, he gets us. And the thing about that message that made me laugh is that it's kind of ironic because as someone who really loves to hike, if you are in nature where it's quiet and you are away from other people and you don't have any modern technology and you don't need any money in theory, like you don't actually need Jesus at all. You're doing just fine without Jesus right there. It was also funny to me that in this scene where they're talking about overconsumption and greed, there were no clips from inside megachurches, which is kind of what one of like the quintessential things you would highlight if you wanted to show people what greed looks like these days. Now, if you're not familiar with these ads, the story behind He Gets Us is kind of wild because again, they've been doing this for 4 years. And when they first announced this whole campaign years ago, this is the headline that was in Christianity Today. $100 million ad campaign aims to make Jesus the biggest brand in your city. And look at this. Those behind the He Gets Us campaign say they will spend $100 million donated by a small group of wealthy, anonymous families on this launch. And again, 4 years ago, the takeaway was who's donating this much money? Who has so much money that tens of millions of dollars counts as pocket change that they could waste it on a campaign like this? And what exactly are they trying to sell you? Because they're not just selling you Jesus, right? They're trying to sell you on their version of Jesus, right? And the thing about the campaign that the people behind it were adamant about 4 years ago is, no, we swear, we're not trying to sell you on conservative Christianity or this church or that church. We really are just trying to sell you on Jesus. And so for years now, they've been putting up these ads that simply market a generic, awesome Jesus. And the only branding you see is He Gets Us whatever the hell their website is. I don't know. I don't go there. But even on that site, they don't advertise anything other than if you put in your zip code, give them your email address. But if you put in your zip code, you could see the churches around you and they don't care which one you go to. They just want you to go to church. Okay, let's talk about a couple aspects of this that I feel do not get talked about enough, which is first, the message is Jesus gets us. He gets us. He's just like you. He understands you. He's been there. But after that, the message is what? What's Christianity? Believe in Jesus, otherwise you're going to be tortured in hell for all of eternity. They don't mention that in the ads, which I think is relevant. Like even pharmaceutical commercials have to add the disclaimer and the fine print that tells you the side effects. There's none of that in these commercials. And also, if you ask who's behind this campaign, they very much try not to tell you anything about that. And the organizers said, look, we're not trying to convert atheists here. We are very much going after the people who might still believe the none of the aboves, who might believe in something, some higher power, but for whatever reason, they no longer want to go to church. There was a tweet that someone made in 2022. Do you remember in the Super Bowl, there were a lot of crypto ads? And a few years ago, those started appearing for the first time. And I still think about this tweet today. Here's the tweet. One reason I still have trouble believing cryptocurrency is money is that there aren't commercials for money, which is a wonderful, hilarious tweet. And the point is what? You don't need an ad for money because everyone uses it. We know how it works. We know it's a good product. Why are they selling Jesus? The only reason you would have to be advertising Jesus is because no one likes it. No one thinks of it as a good thing. No one's craving it. People aren't greedy for Jesus. But the point of that tweet is, if it's a good product that already has widespread usage, you shouldn't need to buy advertising for it. Why? That's a waste of time. And that seems to be the problem here, because when it comes down to it, marketing Jesus comes with an inherent flaw, which is that most of the people who use the product are not worth admiring. That's it. That's what it boils down to. That's the problem with the whole campaign. You can't convince people to buy into Jesus when we see what Christians are doing in the country. And it doesn't matter who you want to point to. Televangelists, megachurch leaders, Republicans in office, annoying evangelists on your college campus, hate preachers, everyone who's at the National Prayer Breakfast, your annoying relatives on Facebook. The amount of harm caused by conservative Christians cannot be understated. And why would you ever want to join a club that has any of those people as members? And if you're trying to market Jesus, why wouldn't you at least acknowledge that the biggest obstacle for people wanting to buy your product are all the people who have already bought the product, right? Like, here's another example of what I mean. In the early days of this He Gets Us campaign, this is an example of what they were putting on Facebook. He gets us, right? Like Jesus confronted racism with love. It's not a Bible verse. They're just saying, look, what does Jesus stand for? Good things. Jesus confronted racism with love. That is a nice message. However, there is no mention in the campaign anywhere that white evangelicals are more likely than anybody else to reject the very idea of structural racism. Who do you think, if I told you someone's racist and religious, what religion do you think they belong to? It's not the Satanists. Here's another example of the same ad campaign. Jesus was a refugee. Well, how does that play today? There is no mention of the fact that during the first Trump administration, Trump opposed refugees entering our country. He said he didn't want anyone coming in from shithole countries. Remember that? And even today, what's the second Trump administration doing? They are lying about cats, people eating cats and dogs, like during the campaign. We've seen what ICE is doing to families who appear to be immigrants or refugees or anything like that. This administration and the Republicans who support them and vote for them, they have waged an all-out war against refugees. They insist that certain types of immigrants are not real Americans. So who's behind that? Again, it's not Muslims I'm afraid of at that point. It's conservative Christians who are going after it. And the irony there is that Jesus would be a brown-skinned individual. They would deport that guy in a heartbeat. Here's another one from the same campaign. Again, you could start rolling your eyes here whenever you want. Jesus fought systems of oppression. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. There's no mention of how Christians are responsible for the most anti-civil rights, anti-LGBTQ laws passing in state legislatures across the country. And I'll show you one more here. Same campaign. Have you ever been bullied? And again, yeah, I probably have online, usually by conservative Christians. There's no mention of how Christians are routinely the people causing harm to others, no matter how often conservative Christians claim to be persecuted. And the entire campaign has always been like this. They elevate a type of Jesus, a form of Christianity that no one living in the real world has ever dealt with. And I want to be clear here. I know there are awesome progressive Christians fighting the good fight. There are some who are protesting ICE. There were a lot of pastors who got harmed physically because they were protesting what ICE is doing. Those people are amazing. I have nothing but respect for them. But generally speaking, when we are talking about Christianity in the news, it's because conservative Christians are using their religion to harm whatever group of people is next on their list, right? And we know that because those same people in power tend to be the first people to complain about the ads that I am showing you right here. In fact, in 2023, they did another Super Bowl ad. I won't show it to you, but in this one, they aired a bunch of clips of people washing someone else's feet. Not in a weird, creepy way, but in a Jesus wash the feet of, people who were shunned by society, things like that. So you might have had a white person washing the foot of a black person, or I don't know, just pick two opposite sides and you have one person washing the foot of the other. And the idea there is like, Jesus teaches us how to get along despite our differences. Well, guess how that one went over? When they aired that ad in 2023, none other than Charlie Kirk said this at the time. The marketing group behind He Gets Us has done one of the worst services to Christianity in the modern era, said Charlie Kirk. Do you like my Charlie Kirk impression? The Green family, more on them in a second, the Green family are decent, wonderful people who have been taken for a ride by these woke tricksters. So sad. Woke tricksters. Jesus and the message of that commercial is, let's help the people we disagree with. Let's wash their feet. Let's be subservient in a way to people we might disagree with. And Charlie Kirk is like, woke tricksters. They're taking money from this ad campaign. People are being deceived. Because, of course, the Jesus that Charlie Kirk worshipped was a MAGA cultist, not a decent human being, right? So, like, even these ads, they're so liberal. They so show a side of Jesus no one actually believes in, at least on the right, that even the people on the right hate it. And I just want to go back to the point that the United States right now is not in a better place because of Jesus followers. Many Americans are suffering as a direct result of what churches are teaching and what Christians are doing and who they are voting for. Like, my politics right now, I feel, and the politics of the people I care about, is very much predicated on fighting against Christian nationalism, which is the type of religion these people belong to. So, and I'll say this too. I got in trouble for saying this. I'll say it again anyway. To me, I think a fair comparison to the people behind this campaign, it's like the Sackler family that created opioids, and they made money off of the opioid epidemic because they want to sell their product to the masses, but then they want to act like they had nothing to do with it when everyone starts seeing the harm caused by their products, as if the two things aren't intertwined, as if the people selling you the product are not to blame for what is happening right now. Here's another problem with the campaign. They, on purpose, they avoid hot button issues. They don't talk about LGBTQ issues. They are not saying Jesus is anti-trans. They're not talking about immigration, because they very much know that if they take a position on anything, they're going to alienate people. So they're very much on the bandwagon of Everything Jesus did is awesome. Everything they're pushing in this campaign should be non-controversial. So by doing that, though, like they make Jesus sound totally, their whole campaign is Jesus is just like us. But us being humans, we are flawed. We all have dumb ideas. You can't say Jesus is like us when the Jesus you're selling has these opinions that no one actually holds, because everyone has opinions on these things. So that's dumb too. Like a better campaign for Jesus, if you want it to be honest, would at least call out cruelty and bigotry, maybe even theocracy in the name of Jesus. But the people behind this campaign are such cowards, they can't even say Jesus would oppose bigotry. Jesus would oppose treating immigrants and poor people the way Republicans are treating them now. They're cowards. This is interesting. So then the question comes up, who's behind this campaign? Where are they getting all this money from? Well, this is an ad that was in Adweek, a marketing trade of all places. But look at this. He Gets Us was created in 2021, initially funded by The Signatory. It is now backed by nonprofit group Come Near, which, by the way, horrible name for a nonprofit, given what we know about what religious leaders have said to children. Come Near. That's creepy as hell. But that was formed in 2023. And who's their CEO? Ken Caldwell, the former Domino's guy. A guy who led Domino's is the best they could find. That's interesting. But who else is on their board of directors? A couple names stand out here, which is Mart Green, who is the founder and CEO of the Christian retailer Martel, and the son of Hobby Lobby CEO David Green. That's the Greens I mentioned earlier. They're the Hobby Lobby family. And also on here, it says Rob Hoskins, president of Christian ministry One Hope. Well, guess what? One Hope is a ministry that is funded by Hobby Lobby. So basically, this entire campaign appears to be funded primarily by the Hobby Lobby family and maybe a few of their rich friends. And what is Hobby Lobby famous for? More than anything, they're the ones who said we don't want to give healthcare coverage to our employees because Obamacare says we have to provide contraception coverage as well. And so they fought to make sure Obamacare would not help people. And they succeeded because the Supreme Court was on their side. Like, if we are allowing those people to define who Jesus is, let's not forget the people funding this campaign are anti-gay, anti-trans, pro-Christian nationalism. The Green family from Hobby Lobby, they also paid for the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C., which is best known for stolen artifacts that the Green family paid for across the world. So that's why you can't separate Jesus from Jesus's followers, no matter how hard these people want to try. The reason so many people want nothing to do with Christianity is largely because of the kind of people who are willing to blow $700 million on a dumb marketing campaign for a product no one wants, instead of actually using that money to help people. It's the problem with billionaires in the country. What's Jeff Bezos doing with his money? Nothing good. These people are no different. So if they want to say the campaign succeeds, by what metric are you using? Because you're not helping anybody. I'll leave you with one thing. Years ago, maybe 20 years ago, there was a famous Christian ministry, famous because it got a lot of press, though it wasn't a huge ministry. But the guy who started it basically said, it's frustrating to me that there's such a divide between Christians and the gay community. Again, this is like the mid-2000s, right? And he said, my ministry aims to bridge that divide. I want gay people to feel at home in church. I want Christians to be nicer to gay people. And that's a very nice thought. Here's the problem. If you ever went to that ministry's website, there was an FAQ on it. And the FAQ specifically asked two questions, because he got the questions all the time. Do you think homosexuality is a sin? And do you believe gay people should be allowed to get married? Very simple questions, right? And the answers that this guy gave every single time was, I'm not answering. whether homosexuality is a sin, because no matter which way I answer, it's going to alienate one group or the other. And when it comes to whether gay people should be allowed to get married, the same thing goes. So instead of answering those very simple moral questions, I'm going to bow out. And to me, and to a lot of gay people, by the way, that was such an act of cowardice. How could you possibly pretend you want to bridge the divide here when you're not even willing to call out the bigotry in your camp? And guess what? That entire ministry ultimately failed. You won't find the website anywhere because it died out years ago, because no one could get on board with this idea that there's a way to bridge the gap between bigots and regular human beings who just want to live their lives. And that's how I feel about this Jesus campaign. They so want to sell you on Jesus, and yet the people who run this campaign and the people they're supporting, the people in their camps, Hobby Lobby, the conservative Christians they work with, are all the people who are ruining this country right now. And if they are unwilling to admit that their religion is part of the reason we're in this mess, then why the hell would anyone want anything to do with that product? Jesus isn't the solution, no matter how much they pretend it is. Jesus is the problem. And until we can acknowledge that, it's all going to be made worse. There are plenty of Christians willing to call out conservative Christians. Kudos to them. This campaign isn't doing it, so you shouldn't listen to it. All right. I will pause there before I keep going. What other questions we got about this campaign? 16 million could care for a lot of people, be like Jesus. And that's for a 1-minute ad that no one saw because it was in the fourth quarter of a pretty blowout game by that point. It wasn't even close. And again, that's 16 million for the 1-minute commercial, 700 million so far over 4 years, and they're not done yet. Think of how much good they could do with that kind of money. Think of what Mackenzie Scott has done with the billions she has, and she's not even close to done. And these people would never give away their money to causes that have nothing to do with promoting their own stuff, their beliefs. Empathy is for the weak was often repeated by the likes of Charlie Kirk. Right. I mean, Allie Beth Stuckey, who's on YouTube and does her conservative Christian show, wrote a book about toxic empathy. These people do not like empathy. They think that you should all be unapologetic and cruel to everybody. And that if you're nice to people, it's a sign of weakness. That's what they're promoting in conservative Christian circles. It's awful. Jesus was a rabble-rouser who only went nature hiking once with Satan. What fanfic are we reading here? But I like it. Very interesting. I feel like he gets us is more for active Christians to feel good that they could see potential people getting converted. So it makes them feel safer and more surrounded by Christian something. I don't disagree with you. I think that campaign does a lot more for Christians to feel like the church they go to is a net good, that the religion they belong to serves a good purpose in this world, because it doesn't. But they need to believe that lie to keep going and to keep giving money, even though it's being wasted. So I think that's a fair point. The campaign is as much for Christians as it is to people who ditch the church for other reasons and who should continue ditching it. All right, I'm jumping to a different story. You give me a minute here. Okay. I actually have some good news here for once, and this is from Oklahoma, and those are not things I generally say in the same breath. But let me back up for a little bit, because this has to do with the state standards for social studies. Oklahoma just did something really amazing in a way about the social studies standards. But to understand why this is a big deal, I got to go back a little bit. So let's go back to 2024, December of 2024. The guy in charge of public education, the superintendent of public instruction, was Ryan Walters, one of these MAGA Christian conservatives. This is the press release he put out at the time. The Oklahoma State Department of Education releases revised social studies standards. What did Ryan Walters say at the time? Well, the standards include Superintendent Walters' Bible curriculum recommendations and mention the Bible and its historical impact over 40 times. And look at the statement he has here. Oklahoma is putting the Bible and the historical impact of Christianity back in school. ... Eradicate radical woke influences from our schools. And he goes on to say the standards have no more racially divisive, hypersexualized, watered down, weak curriculum that has left us with the worst public education outcomes in our history. Our children deserve more, they deserve better, and these standards deliver. Right. So what was in the standards that Ryan Walters was pushing at the time? Well, I'll just run through the list really quick, and this is not comprehensive, but it's a lot of it. First graders would be taught the purpose and meaning of the Pledge of Allegiance and the significance of the phrase "under God." They would have to explain the meaning of "in God we trust." They would have to explain the importance of religion to the American people, as if everyone thinks it's important. Second graders would be taught stories from Christianity that influenced the American colonists, founders, and culture, including the teachings of Jesus. And then in parentheses, it said the golden rule, as if doing unto others, treating others the way we want to be treated was something Jesus made up on the spot and no one ever thought about before him. Eighth graders would have to evaluate the role of Judeo-Christian ideals in the founding of our country. And it said, we have to do that because, and the proof of that is the Bible being a frequently cited authority by America's founders. That's not a thing. It was not a frequently cited authority. What about for high school? In high school, the indoctrination got worse. Christianity and slavery, for example, were only linked together to say that some abolitionists were Christian, and there is no mention of the fact that the Bible was often used to justify enslavement. What about U.S. government classes? Well, students had to describe how the Constitution was influenced by religion, morality, and the Bible. This goes on for a while, but you get the idea. Like, they very much wanted to shove a David Barton fake history into the curriculum in order to make Oklahoma students dumber because they wouldn't know any better. And that's what they wanted to do. What about politics? In the social studies standards, they covered politics too. And when it comes to what do kids today need to know about modern politics, or at least the politics of the last 20 to 30 years, well, the standards say students need to be able to summarize the impact of President Clinton's impeachment. Fine. But then there's no mention of Donald Trump's 2 impeachments. They don't have to learn about that at all. So this is what they did. So why were the standards like this? Well, look at who crafted them. Ryan Walters said that the members of that 10-person committee would include the co-founder of the conservative nonprofit PragerU, a representative from the conservative American Enterprise Institute, and the president of another conservative group, the Heritage Foundation, the people behind Project 2025, along with multiple other right-wing voices. Only 3 of the people on the executive committee have ever lived in Oklahoma. No public school teachers, no administrators on the executive committee. So that is what Ryan Walters had. That's who he had making these standards. No wonder they were so biased against Republicans. I'm sorry, biased in the sense that they ignored what Republicans had done, but pushed Jesus into the picture. So these were bad standards. And let me fast forward a little bit here. Ryan Walters released those standards to the public. The public had 60 days to weigh in, and then the Board of Education for the state had to vote to accept those standards. Well, guess what happened? Right before the board was supposed to vote on those standards, Ryan Walters basically went to them and said, hey, everyone, here's the revised standards you got to vote on tomorrow. And they're like, revised? That's weird. Did you make any changes to it? He's like, don't worry about it. Just vote yes, because there's a deadline and we got to do this by tomorrow. So no one had any time to read the revisions, and the public had no clue what they were talking about because the public never got access to it. So the Board of Education listened to Ryan Walters and voted them in, voted the standards through. And the thing is, what was in those revised standards? Well, check this out. This is from Oklahoma Voice. Here's what happened there. Under the new draft, public schools would not be I'm sorry, I'm going to go back. That's not what I wanted to show you. Ignore that. Among other things, he wanted teachers to tell kids that the 2020 election had major discrepancies. So that it's what Trump says, right? They stole the election in 2020. He said there were security risks with mail-in ballots. No, there weren't. He said there were sudden batch dumps that changed the election results. That's like Dinesh D'Souza conspiracy right there. He said COVID originated in a Chinese lab. There's no proof of that. It also used the phrase Gulf of America everywhere. And it removed certain requirements that taught kids about racial discrimination and the Black Lives Matter movement. He made all those changes unilaterally, didn't tell anybody, made the board vote on it. So they were so bad. And the board voted this through because they didn't know any better, that textbook publishers, famous ones, were like, we're not writing textbooks to meet your standards. Even though it might get us a contract with Oklahoma, it's not helpful to our reputation to spread lies in a textbook. So you're on your own if you want to get this stuff. And beyond that, after those standards passed, there was a lawsuit over it. The lawsuit said this guy, I mean, not just that these standards are bad, but they violated the law. Why? Because the revised standards that Ryan Walters made everyone sign on to, they didn't have the 60-day public version that people could vote on. They also said, like, you're just violating Oklahoma law in terms of how you get standards passed. Well, last September, the Oklahoma Supreme Court stepped in and said, school's starting. We got to vote on this now. For now, temporary block. Hey, teachers, don't use the Ryan Walters standards. Just use the 2019 version, which is the last version that was passed. And then in December, they said, all right, here's our decision. Don't use the Ryan Walters version. It's illegal. He violated the Open Meetings Act by forcing these standards through without public input, without even giving the board members time to look through them. Great. Okay, here's where we're at now. And this is why I really wanted to share this with you, because Ryan Walters, as you may remember, resigned late last year. And his replacement is a guy named Lyndall Fields, a conservative, but a guy who, from everything I've seen, just seems fine. He seems professional, like he just wants to do this job well. Well, Lyndall Fields has been trying to roll back so much of what Ryan Walters did. And so when it comes to the new standards, this week, Lyndall Fields, with a group of people who are history experts, they just released a draft of new social studies standards. And this is what I meant to show you earlier. Here you go. Or this is what I accidentally showed you earlier. Under the new draft, public schools would not be required to teach Bible stories, nor a disputed claim that COVID originated in a Chinese lab. References to patriotism are pared down, though not completely removed, and students would not be taught how the Bible and Judeo-Christian ideals influenced America's founders. High school students would not be asked to identify discrepancies in the 2020 presidential election, including sudden halting of ballot counting in select cities and key battleground states, sudden batch dumps, an unforeseen record number of voters, and the unprecedented contradiction of bellwether county trends. So They basically went back and controlled Z'd the 2019 standards. Everything Ryan Walters changed. They're like, yeah, we're just getting rid of pretty much all of this. So that's kind of amazing. Um, it's so funny to me. I look through the standards. I search for the word Bible. It appears once. And specifically, it is mentioned in relation to the Gutenberg printing press and how the Bible spread after that, which is true. Christianity appears a few times, but often in the context of how colonialists tried to convert indigenous people in the new country. There are some pro-Christian messages in there too, but like nothing that matches, hey, all the founders were totally mega Christians, which is what Ryan Walters was going for. So are there issues with it? Maybe, but like nothing significant. Pretty much everyone could get on board with this. When it comes to Trump, they do have a section on Trump now. And it basically says students should be able to identify the big events in his first term, including tax cuts, social media influence, judicial appointments, changes in foreign policy, COVID response, political polarization, etc. And if you're trying to teach high schoolers what happened back in the old days when Trump was president the first time, those are good topics as a baseline. You got to cover those. What about Biden? The new standards say you got to talk about economic recovery after COVID. You got to talk about bipartisan infrastructure policy, talk about foreign policy, such as the withdrawal from Afghanistan, what's going on between Israel and Hamas, what's happening in the Ukraine. So you got to talk about all that, which, yeah, those are big deals in impactful situations in the Biden administration. In short, the new standards are what you would expect any decent state to say students should know in their social studies or history or government classes. And obviously, those are standards. That's the bare minimum. School districts can always go above and beyond all that. And here's how you know this is working. There is a right-wing group, the Oklahoma Council of Public Affairs, and they are so mad at the new standards. It is kind of amazing. Let me show you what they are saying right over here, if I can pull this up. This is what one right-wing group is saying about all this. But the Oklahoma education establishment has taken advantage of the new revision process to remove much of what was good in the 2024 draft standards. It may not be possible to do better at present, given the unease aroused in many Oklahomans by the procedural irregularities, ... But the 2026 standards do sacrifice many of the gains of the 2024 standards. And then it says this: the 2026 Oklahoma standards reflect the education establishment's studied lack of interest in patriotism, the historic roots of the American Republic, or any notable achievements by conservatives or Republicans. You want to know why they don't mention the notable achievements of conservatives or Republicans? Because there are none. Jesus, that's an easy question. Also, students would not need to be taught patriotism if the people who run Oklahoma ever gave them better reasons to love their country. Like in countries where people love their country and have pride in their country, you don't have to be forced to say a pledge of allegiance to it every morning. That's called brainwashing in other countries. What else is here? This is also funny. If you look at what Republicans say about these standards, it seems very, very clear that even Republicans in Oklahoma are like, yeah, we're fine with the new version. Because even they don't like Ryan Walters. So look at this. This is from Lonnie Paxton, the Senate President Pro Tem. Social studies standards should not be that controversial. I'm glad we're getting another bite of that apple. The Republican-led legislature last time around could have just blocked the standards, but they didn't have the votes to do it because Republicans are cowards. And now this guy's like, I like this version. It seems good. Who wanted to make it controversial? One of your people. That's who. And you did not anything. There's also this from a Democrat leader. This is from Cindy Munson, who's the House Minority Leader. I think the former superintendent, Ryan Walters, just had a hold on the Republicans in this building. His influence was really, I think, weighing on those who were elected. And so they didn't want to fight him. I think she's right. I think it's the same reason you don't see elected Republicans pushing back against all the awful stuff Trump is doing right now if they plan to continue being in office. They're so scared of this dude. And from what I've heard from Democrats, Republicans tell them in private all the time, of course Trump is crazy. We know he's insane. But in public, they never say that because they're cowards, because that's what the Republican Party stands for. But it is interesting to me, Ryan Walters, who is not Trump, doesn't have that kind of money, doesn't have that kind of power. These guys are still afraid of that dude? Why? Because he has a Twitter account? Calm down. You could have pushed back against him. And remember, Republicans in the legislature tried to impeach Ryan Walters or tried to investigate Ryan Walters, and it went nowhere because they didn't have the votes. Honestly, the best thing about these new social studies standards is that they seem normal. And honestly, in a state like Oklahoma, that may be the best thing you can hope for. Just give me the bare minimum. Let teachers figure out where to go from there. I almost think it's funny. Ryan Walters, his whole goal was to push everything to the right. Everything was a culture war battle. And time after time, as we've seen, including this example, he has failed. And why did he fail? Because he pushed so far to the right that even Republicans are like, we cannot get on board with this. Even the governor of Oklahoma is like, I can't support this guy. He's making me look dumb. And most of those Republicans like are very much aligned with his values. But it's like the anti-gay crowd cheering on Kim Davis in her battle for the Supreme Court to overturn Obergefell. The Supreme Court's like, we're not taking up your case. And a bunch of Christians are like, yeah, you're not the ideal person to help us overturn marriage equality. So normal standards should be a breath of fresh air. So anyway, I'm glad this is happening. It's good news for the state. It's good news for the students in that state. It's horrible news for Ryan Walters, which is even better news for everybody else. That's it. What questions you got about this story? Ryan thought he was going to go far in the Trump world. I know. It makes me laugh every time I think he did this for years, probably because he wanted to be Secretary of Education. And then Trump gave it to the wrestling lady, which is somehow a step up from Ryan Walters. After COVID is absolute nonsense. Thank you. You're right. I said that. I shouldn't have said that. COVID isn't gone. Long COVID still exists. When I said after COVID, I just mean the worst part of the pandemic, when no vaccines were available, the virus is spreading. Now the virus is still spreading, less so, but it's still out there. But vaccines are available for smart people who take them. With technically information so readily available, how can they see this working? I guess they hope they brainwash the kids enough they won't question it. I mean, think about what we're talking about here. Most people, most Americans have no clue what's happening in the country at all. It's why so many of them vote for people like Donald Trump. But if you think about high school students, they really, and I mean this in the best way, because I think so many high school students are ridiculously smart. Most high school students do not know the history that oldies like us have grown up with. They don't know enough history. So this really is their first introduction to a lot of this. So if you can brainwash them early and tell them, yeah, the 2020 election was totally rigged, they don't realize you're lying to them. And that's Ryan Walters' goal. It's what so many churches know too. If you tell them the creationism story before they ever hear about evolution, you might actually trick them into thinking it's true. They might start believing in God as long as you could get to them early before they realize there are non-believers out there. That's why atheists, like who are normal, are such a threat to so many of these churches and pastors, because everything we say makes sense. And when you put it in that light, everything they say doesn't. So Didn't Trump just call the OK governor a rhino? Yes, he did. He just called Kevin Stitt I think Kevin Stitt's term limited, but he's also the guy putting together like the National Governors Association conference. And like Trump made him not invite a black governor. He made him not invite another governor to the thing that's supposed to be, hey, we're all governors, no matter what the party is. We all have similar issues to deal with. Let's meet at the White House because that's a chance for all of us to get together. And Trump wanted to use it to hurt certain Democratic governors. And there was such backlash to it that they had to cancel the whole event. And I think today, Trump just called Kevin Stitt of Oklahoma a rhino, a Republican in name only, because Kevin Stitt wasn't having it either, which is just funny. Let them fight, man. I don't care. All right, jump into a different story. Give me a minute here. All right. I don't know if you've seen this story anywhere yet. So if you haven't seen it, this should be interesting. Recently, like early February, there was a meeting at the Museum of the Bible, which I've already mentioned tonight in Washington, D.C. Basically, a Christian hate group hosted what they called a national gathering for prayer and repentance, as if prayer and repentance is going to solve any of the problems caused by the very Christians who decided to organize this event. So it was a 4-hour event. It was live streamed. It was hosted by the Family Research Council, and it had a lot of politicians, a lot of Republican MAGA cultists, had a lot of pastors begging God to return the country to its moral foundation. And these are all people who overly actively support the thrice married, wildly corrupt, racist who paid hush money to porn stars that he was having an affair with while his latest wife was pregnant with his 5th child. You know, morality. So when you hear their speeches, most of them just said some version of America needs God. But I wanted to highlight one of the speeches in particular because it wasn't one of the main draws. She was just there, but it was on the live stream. And it's from a congresswoman from Tennessee you may not have heard of because she doesn't get a lot of media attention, but her name is Diana Harshbarger. And she basically said, we need to ask for God's help to support Donald Trump. And that's a weird thing to ask for. Let me play you the clip. It's about a minute long, and then we will talk about how messed up this is.
I pray for our president, Lord, that you would draw him into a powerful relationship with you, Father. Thank you for his servant's heart, God. I pray that you would anoint him with the Holy Spirit, God, the power of the Holy Spirit, Lord. Let the president feel you in every area of his life, and with every decision he makes, God, let him know that you strengthen him. Father, he needs you. Our nation needs you, God. I pray for Congress, Lord, that you would give us wisdom and discernment in all that we do, God. I pray that you would order our steps and give us divine appointments, Lord, to share the gospel of Jesus Christ. And God, I pray that you would put godly people in places of authority and take those people out of those places that are not godly, Lord.
There's so much wrong with that. So much. First of all, if you think Trump has a servant's heart, your moral compass is just permanently broken. Like Congress, and she also said, I pray for Congress, Lord, that you would give us wisdom and discernment. Congress doesn't lack people who have wisdom and discernment. The problem is that those people are currently in the minority, right? The people who are in the majority, require marching orders from the voices in their head or Stephen Miller, neither of which is helpful, because no one in their lives, no one in the Republican majority's lives taught them to just do the right thing if it didn't help them politically. Like, they're incapable of thinking for themselves, much less listening to their constituents. And that last line, though, that's the thing that really ticked me off. God, I pray that you would put godly people in places of authority and take those people out of the places that are not godly. That's the sort of thing you can only get away with saying if you're a conservative Christian in this country. Because if she said it about Jews or Muslims, I mean, I know the Fox crowd wouldn't care, but it would be a bigger scandal. But because she says, if they're not godly, please don't allow them to have any position of leadership. Are you kidding me? It's the sort of bigotry you can only get away with as a Christian in this country. And if an atheist politician like Jared Huffman said, hey, God, I wish you would get rid of all the godly Christians currently in Congress, you know what the backlash would look like. But he would never say it because he doesn't believe that. But this entire event went like that. And it's proof that the people dragging this country into a ditch are also these attention-seeking, very publicly devout, awful people. Right? It's not that Christians are the problem. It's that Christian nationalists, like Diana Harshbarger, like her allies there, are so hell-bent on following whatever they think or pretend God wants them to do. They have no ability to see how much harm they are causing. By the way, speaking of godly people, do you want to know how godly Diana Harshbarger is? Well, do you know why she loves Trump so much? Let me share with you this article right here. Trump pardons the husband of a Republican congressional ally. This is not old. This is from November 10th of last year. Look at this. In 2013, Robert Harshbarger Jr., a licensed pharmacist at the time, pleaded guilty to healthcare fraud and distributing a misbranded drug, in this case, kidney medications, some of which came from China, that were not approved for the purpose by the FDA. So he was guilty of healthcare fraud. The other part here, Mr. Harshbarger was sentenced in 2013 to 4 years in prison and ordered to pay more than $848,000 in restitution, as well as a $25,000 fine and $425,000 in forfeiture. Trump pardoned that guy. Why? Not because the guy didn't do it, but because his wife is a Republican in Congress and he needs her votes for stuff. It's just corruption right there in the open. And that's the lady who says, you know, we need more godly people like me, not godless people like everybody else. Really quick, who else spoke at this meeting in question? This is from Right Wing Watch right here. Dozens of members of Congress convened. Representative Randy Weber wept that, Lord, we've trampled on what you called holy matrimony. We've called it an alternative lifestyle. So I assume he's talking about same-sex marriage. But again, Trump is on wife number 3. They don't care about that at all, much less what Trump did to wife number 2, allegedly. What else? Who else spoke there? Mike Johnson, who lied about the Christian foundations of our country. They had Tony Perkins, the hate group leader, who you can find a picture online of him speaking to a white supremacist group in front of a Confederate flag. That's Tony Perkins. He helped organize this thing. They had Mary Miller, a congresswoman from Southern Illinois, who's most famous for quoting the Fuhrer in a speech. That's a real thing she did. They also had David and Timmy Barton, the Christian pseudo-historians who lie about American history and convince these goobers that all of their revisionist history is correct. So who spoke at this event? A whole bunch of people with huge platforms, all of whom were asking God to bless their continued grip on power. They use Christianity as a weapon to hurt others, and then they go around and tell people, we're just acting on God's will. All while covering their eyes and ears every time another Republican breaks a commandment, stands accused of being a sex predator. I mean, we saw it happening today as I'm making this during the Pam Bondi hearing. So instead of reckoning with corruption or cruelty or hypocrisy, they always pretend they are the victims. And that means casting their enemies, their opponents, as enemies of God. By the way, speaking of opponents who are enemies of God, I feel like I need to tell you, if you don't know this already, Diana Harshbarger is in the first district of Tennessee. Very, very red district. And it's the sort of district where Democrats may not even run for office because it feels like an uphill climb. Well, if you don't know this already, a YouTuber who goes by Jezebel Vibes on YouTube, her name is Christy Burke. She has spent the past year, maybe more, really being active in the first district of Tennessee, trying to go to town halls with Diana Harshbarger, getting kicked out because she was asking tough questions, protesting there. And in fact, she just announced a couple of weeks ago that she is running as a Democrat in that primary to be the candidate to take on Diana Harshbarger. And I cannot pretend to be her friend. I wish I were. I don't know her that well, but I have talked to her before. I just think she's the best. This is me telling you, you should absolutely go support her campaign. It's votechristyburke.com. Go donate to her already. But the thing I really wanted to share with you, I showed Christy that video of what Diana Harshbarger said. And I said, hey, she's kind of talking about you too. What do you think about it? And this is what Christy told me. If someone asks to be trusted as godly, their actions still have to stand on their own. Diana Harshbarger has ignored her constituents, voted for corporate tax breaks and cruel immigration policies, and stayed silent as her colleagues in Congress confront evidence of a massive global sex trafficking cover-up. The president she praises as having a servant's heart is mentioned at least 38,000 times in the Epstein files. I did not hear her pray for the victims of these horrendous crimes. And actually, since she sent me that, Jamie Raskin has said Trump appears over 1 million times in the files. Christie went on to say, calling this servant leadership doesn't make it true. Serving power while people suffer is the opposite of public service. So that's Christy. She is amazing. Go subscribe to her channel, donate to her campaign. Again, I know it's an uphill climb. I love the fact that she also knows what the numbers look like, and she is not letting that stop her from fighting a good fight. And by the way, if you live in Tennessee, outside of or part of Nashville too, we saw this in a special election recently where Afton Bain, I believe a state legislator ran for Congress in a special election. She lost, but not by that much. And that's the thing. If you get good Democrats who are willing to fight against people like Harshbarger, they may not all win, but they're going to really energize the base in a part of the country where the base deserves to be energized. And they are clamoring for people willing to fight. So kudos to Christy for doing that. And one last thing. This event was like a one-off thing earlier this month, but every year there's the National Prayer Breakfast hosted by conservative Christians. It's basically the same thing. And every year a handful of Democrats choose to participate because who's going to be against the National Day of Prayer? All of them should. You're not a bad Christian for skipping that right-wing event. And I do not know why more Democrats do not push back against that event, because it's not bipartisan. It's a right-wing Republican event, and they need to stop going to it. All right, I will stop there for now. What questions we got here? They always have the same accent. They always do, and I always have the same accent when I'm reading the stuff they say. My range is that big. Invite her on your channel, cross-pollinate. I believe I have. I think if you are on my channel, not now, but later, go look up in my video archives an interview with Christy Burke or with Jezebel Vibes. You will find an interview I did with Christy because, again, she's awesome. Her grit and drive is a pillar of steel. I assume we are talking about Christy, in which case I agree. In a theocracy like we're heading towards, what are the mechanisms available to overturn it peacefully? The thing I would take issue with is the theocracy word, because I think even conservative Christians know that would be going too far. They can't get away with that. So the question is, in a place where Republicans, we reword the question this way: in a place where Republicans have so much power, what are the mechanisms available? And I really do think it goes to what I said earlier about having candidates willing to fight. Congress is a hard thing to fight for. It takes a lot of money to run a congressional race. But you know what's easier to win than a congressional race? A state legislative race. And I'm not saying it's easy, I'm saying it's easier. What's easier than that? A city council race, a school board race. I just filled out the primary ballot in Illinois, just the Democratic ticket for the primary for our upcoming elections. There was at least one position where nobody was on the ballot running for that seat. And it's like, come on, that's ridiculous. There ought to be someone willing to do that. And I think the problem is that a lot of Democrats end up saying that. So someone should do it. I don't want to do it. I'm not qualified to do it. And the thing is, no, you're definitely more qualified than the Republicans with absolutely no awareness, no knowledge, no history, who always think they're overqualified for those jobs. And so that's the thing. It starts local. You got to run for or vote for people in your communities who are willing to do the stuff that affects you the most. Because your school board and your city council affect you a lot more than Congress is going to. And so getting good people on those seats, in those seats, that's the way you start to push back. That's why it's so exciting when there's like a mayoral race and a smaller city elects a really progressive person, because that does count for a lot. And when you start seeing that, oh, those people are not scary at all. The right kept calling them communists, but like they just wanted to plow the roads quickly after a snowfall. It's like, yeah, they believe in government. They think government can be effective and help you. And it's not scary, and people realize that. And that's the sort of domino effect we need that can help candidates down the line. All right, I'm jumping to a different story here. Oh, it's been a while since I played Upwards. I love that game. All right. Oh, I'm excited to talk about this because it is starting to get controversial as I'm making this. And I feel like this hasn't even blown up yet. So it's a big deal. Okay. On May 1st, 2025, last year, on the National Day of Prayer, Donald Trump, to appease a bunch of Christians, he did this. He signed an executive order establishing the Religious Liberty Commission. And I'll scroll down to the important bit here. Basically, it says we're going to establish this commission. It has 14 members appointed by the president. That's important. Remember that. But what's the goal of this commission? To offer diverse perspectives on how the federal government can defend religious liberty for all Americans. That sounds nice. And they have to do two things. Literally, there are two jobs they have to do. The commission shall produce a comprehensive report on the foundations of religious liberty in America, the impact of religious liberty on American society, current threats to domestic liberty, strategies to preserve and enhance religious liberty protections for future generations, and programs to increase awareness of and celebrate America's peaceful religious pluralism. Yikes. A long way of saying, write me a report that Trump isn't going to read. But basically, let's talk about religious liberty, and is it under threat? What do we do to protect it? Okay, that's number one. The second thing they got to do, advise the White House Faith Office and the Domestic Policy Council on religious liberty policies of the United States. Okay, so in essence, the best version of this, you have a group of people. They are experts in religious liberty. They come together, they have discussions, they have public meetings. They're going to figure out, where is religious liberty under attack? What can the government do? What can the federal government do to protect it? Here's a report that we will submit. And also, hey, White House, hey, Republicans in Congress and the majority, here's what you can do to strengthen religious freedom, because isn't that what we all want here? So the executive order itself is not really problematic. It's kind of boring, to be honest with you. But it seems like it shouldn't have been a big deal. Here's the other thing I got to show you, which seems unrelated, but hold on. Right here, in 1972, Congress passed the Federal Advisory Committee Act. FACA. Let's just call it FACA. That's fun to say. And basically, all this did is it said, anytime you have a presidential appointed committee, just like the one I just told you about, they have to be transparent, they have to be balanced in terms of ideological makeup, and they have to be structured so that they're not going to be influenced by special interests. Basically, FACA was a law that said, okay, if we're going to have presidential committees, let's make sure they're not corrupt. Let's just make sure it's transparent and balanced so we get the best of the best, doing the right things for the right reasons. Totally fine. Okay, what has happened this week? Well, this week, all of this shit hit the fan because there was a lawsuit filed by a coalition of religious organizations saying that Trump's Religious Liberty Commission has violated FACA many times over. That's the allegation, and it's who's suing? The Interfaith Alliance, Muslims for Progressive Values, the Sikh American Legal Defense and Education Fund, Hindus for Human Rights, and they are all represented by lawyers from Americans United for Separation of Church and State. So, for example, let me show you what they are saying here. Look at this part of their lawsuit, number 50, right over here. The commission's membership is far from fairly balanced because it does not represent religious communities aside from Christianity and Judaism. And let me just mention that for a second. That executive order said there have to be 14 members of this committee. The committee has 13 conservative Christians on it and one Orthodox Jew who is basically a Christian nationalist on his own. That's the ideological balance they have on this commission. So back to the lawsuit. In remarks made to the commission, defendant Trump has articulated a commitment to protect what he describes as the Judeo-Christian principles of our founding. The commission's imbalanced membership reflects a narrow conception of which religious principles and whose rights are worth protecting. So, very valid point. This is not ideologically diverse at all. In case you're wondering who's on this committee, the guy leading it, the chair, is Dan Patrick. He's the lieutenant governor of Texas, next in line to Greg Abbott. And that guy's like a MAGA cultist, conservative Christian. Who else is on it? Franklin Graham, the evangelist that your relatives repost on Facebook. Dr. Phil, for some reason. Evangelical conspiracy theorist Eric Metaxas is on the bill. And former beauty pageant contestant Carrie Prejean Bowler, who I think made headlines like 10, 15 years ago because when she was in one of those pageants, she said like something anti-gay, so the right loved her. So she's on there too. That's who's on this thing. The lawsuit goes on to say this about the people on the committee. Number 52. I'm sorry, here's who else is on the list here. They made a big list. So we got, there we go, the chair. Letter A is Dan Patrick, right? They got Dr. Ben Carson. They got Carrie Bowler. They got Cardinal Timothy Dolan, the very conservative Catholic leader who just stepped down, I believe. Dr. Phil is on there. Who else we got? Paula White. I forgot Paula White, the one who speaks in tongues in that viral video. The leader of First Liberty, and Rabbi, Orthodox Jew, Orthodox Jewish rabbi. So they got the one token dude who's also a Christian nationalist. And they got Pam Bondi a part of it. Okay. So look at number 52. This is from the lawsuit. Of the commission's members, none are members of a religion that does not fit within defendant Trump's Judeo-Christian framework. For example, the commission includes no adherents or representatives of Islam, Hinduism, or Sikhism, several of the most common religions in the US behind Christianity and Judaism. And again, if you have a group of 14 people, you're not going to get a perfect representation of all the religions. But if it's a religious liberty commission, can't you kind of get a little bit of religious diversity on there? That seems weird, right? Okay. What else do we know about this? Here's how else we know this is not about ideological diversity. They've now held 5 meetings of the Religious Liberty Commission. All of them have been at the Museum of the Bible, which is a right-wing institution founded by the Hobby Lobby Green family. And that is also disturbing. They're not having it at some neutral place. Look at number 71 in the lawsuit here. During the first meeting, the commission focused on the historical tradition of Christianity in the United States. Members of the commission discussed how Christian faith shaped the nation's understanding of freedom, law, and human dignity, and quoted a statement that the nation should prefer Christians for our rulers. Didn't even know we had rulers, but there you go. Number 72, the commission opened the September 8th meeting with a Christian prayer and closed the September 29th hearing with a specifically Christian prayer in Jesus' name. So yeah, they are very much not even paying lip service to other religions. Then the lawsuit makes the best allegation that I have seen in a long time. Look at 75 here. FACA requires transparency. I told you that, right? You got to be transparent. It requires defendants to make available in advance of the public meetings where their content will be relevant, records, reports, transcripts, minutes, appendices, working papers, drafts, studies, agenda, etc., etc. Right. If you're going to have a big public meeting, tell us what you're going to discuss. Tell us who's going to speak there. What are they planning to say? Put all that out there for the public. That's how transparency works. When you're done with the meeting, post the video, post the minutes, give us access to everything that was discussed so the public knows what's going on so people can weigh in. And look at what the lawsuit says. Number 76. Defendants did not provide advance notice of witness lists or other documents made available to the commission in advance of these meetings. So don't tell us you didn't have them. You did. The members got them. The public didn't. 77. Defendants did not provide agendas for the meeting in advance. 78. Defendants have not produced transcripts for the 3 meetings they had last year. Defendants also appear to have edited the videos for at least 1 meeting and posted incomplete video on their website. And I don't know what was edited out, allegedly, but okay. None of the witness statements made to the commission have been publicly available in written form. Detailed minutes for the meetings have not been made publicly available. What the hell is going on? Like, this is not even, oh, it's the Epstein files. We got to hide everything. I'm Pam Bondi. I got to cover everything up. It's not like that. This is a religious liberty commission. Why aren't you doing the bare minimum here? All you got to do is say, here's the agenda we made on Google Docs. They're not even doing that because they're very much hiding what's going on here. And the reason all this matters is because the religious groups that are filing this lawsuit say we cannot offer resources that might be helpful to your meeting if we don't even know what's going to be discussed. So you got to tell us what you're going to talk about. They're making it harder for the public to weigh in on these issues. And they say, because of the opaqueness of this group, it seems very likely that whenever they issue a final report, it will, quote, inflict further harm on the plaintiffs. So what's the lawsuit asking for? Well, they're asking the court to step in and say that the commission has violated FACA, that they want the commission to employ good faith efforts to balance their ideological makeup. They want a disclaimer on the eventual report that says it was produced in violation of the law, just so, the future people reading it know that it got no input from outsiders. And they want the commission to release all the information they have been hiding so far, which seems pretty standard. That's not, what are you hiding? This is what one of the defendants said when this lawsuit was filed. Check this out. This is from Americans United for Separation of Church and State, right up here. Religious freedom for some is religious freedom for none, says Reverend Paul Brandeis Rauschenbusch, president and CEO of Interfaith Alliance. The government has no right to pick and choose which religious beliefs to promote and which to marginalize. The Trump administration has failed to uphold our country's proud religious freedom tradition, and we will hold them accountable. Today's lawsuit is our recommitment to fight for religious liberty with every tool available to us. And one more quote here. This commission isn't about protecting religious liberty for all. It's about rejecting our nation's religious diversity and prioritizing one narrow set of conservative Judeo-Christian beliefs. That's from Rachel Laser of Americans United. There's one other thing, and this is very interesting. Well, two things. First is, in response to the lawsuit, guess what the Department of Justice said? Pam Bondi's spokesperson said this. Through the Religious Liberty Commission's hearings, President Trump has created opportunities for Americans from all walks of life to share their testimonies, concerns, and recommendations to better support civil rights and religious freedom in the United States. The Department of Justice's mission is to uphold the rule of law and ensure fair and impartial justice for all Americans, which is an endeavor every American should support regardless of their political beliefs. Thank you, ChatGPT. That's not what the question was. The question is, hey, you're being sued. What do you have to say about what the lawsuit says? And they gave that, which is a nothing burger. It's just words. They didn't respond to anything the lawsuit said. So that was pointless. So that's just dumb. But here's the best part about this. This is the best part. More recently, this morning, as I was putting together all of this, Dan Patch. Oh, okay. It's Wednesday when I'm making this. They had a meeting for this group on Tuesday, I believe, February 10th, maybe Monday, February 9th. But it turns out they were discussing anti-Semitism. And you know how much the right loves that topic these days. Well, Carrie Prejean Bowler, the beauty queen, was at that meeting because she's part of this commission. And she was wearing, to my surprise, a pin for Palestine. And she actually pointed out something, and I'm paraphrasing here. She pointed out that, not all Catholics, because she's a conservative Catholic. Here's a newspaper article from the Jewish Telegraphic Agency explaining what happened. During Monday's hearing, Prejean Bowler, who was named to the commission in June, argued that anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitic and said her Catholic faith prohibits her from supporting Israel. I'm Catholic, and Catholics do not embrace Zionism. Just so you know. So are all Catholics anti-Semites? Which is an interesting question to ask. First of all, not all Catholics are identical. So she doesn't speak for everybody. Fine. But also, I do find it very interesting to hear someone like her, conservative Catholic, basically say something that people on the left have been saying forever. If you oppose what Israel's government has been doing to Gaza, that doesn't mean you don't love Jewish people or that you don't support Israel or the Jews. You can just be critical of Israel's government. That's a very different thing. And a lot of people on the right don't want any criticism of Israel whatsoever. If you criticize Netanyahu, if you criticize what Israel has done, the genocide in Gaza, they are going to get mad that you must hate Jewish people. It's like, nope, not the same thing at all. And I get it when progressives say it, but holy shit, this is Carrie Prejean Bowler saying this at a meeting of the right-wing Religious Liberty Commission. So holy crap, she said that during the meeting. And this morning, this is Dan Patrick, the chair of the commission. Look what he posted this morning. Carrie Prejean Bowler has been removed from President Trump's Religious Liberty Commission. No member of the commission has the right to hijack a hearing for their own personal and political agenda on any issue. This is clearly, without question, what happened Monday in our hearing on anti-Semitism in America. This was my decision. First of all, the entire commission has been hijacked for political purposes, so that's a dumb thing to say. But also, the second there is some ideological diversity on a very serious topic, look at how these people handle it. They're like, all right, we're kicking that woman off the group. They can't deal with it. He posted that at 9:03 a.m. on Wednesday morning. Well, guess what Carrie Prejean Bowler responded about, well, she did it tonight, right before I started doing this live stream. Dear Chairman Patrick, I write in response to your public statement falsely claiming that you removed me from President Trump's Religious Liberty Commission. As the name states, this is President Trump's Religious Liberty Commission and not yours. You did not appoint me to the commission. You lack authority to remove me from it. This is a gross overstepping of your role and leads me to believe you are acting in alignment with a Zionist political framework that hijacked the hearing rather than in defense of religious liberty. We serve as equals on this commission. Just as I cannot remove you, you cannot remove me. Then she talks and talks and talks. Your attempt to remove me from my deeply held religious beliefs, well done there, while I was serving on a Religious Liberty Commission directly contradicts the mission of this body, protecting religious liberty, including that of devout Catholics like myself who reject Zionism. Wow. So she's setting the ground. Whenever you hear deeply held religious beliefs, it's like she's setting the scene for a future lawsuit. I was discriminated against for my religion. So this is happening right now. And again, it just makes me laugh because what did you think you were stepping into? That's like someone going on Fox News as an anchor and saying, what? You don't like me for criticizing President Trump? I thought I could say what I felt here. No, buddy, do you understand the group you just walked into? You don't get your own opinions here. That's not how this works. My favorite part of this story about the Carrie Prejean Bowler thing is that the Catholic League, which is the right-wing group that gets mad anytime anyone criticizes Catholics or says like, hey, maybe we should hold priests accountable for the awful things they've been doing in church. They get mad. Well, they had a whole article basically saying, hey, we heard what Carrie Prejean Bowler said on Monday, and we want her gone. And they posted this morning. And then a few minutes later, they added an update. Rogue Catholic ousted from religious panel. This is Bill Donahue, the Catholic League guy. At 9:57 a.m., I called for the ouster of Carrie Prejean Bowler from this commission. I just learned that the commission chairman, Dan Patrick, gave her the boot at 10:03 a.m. Kudos to him. Listen, man, I promise you, Dan Patrick has been dealing with this for like over a day now. He did not see your press release and then say, what? I need to do, let me type up this tweet in the span of 6 minutes and get it out there. Bill Donahue is trying to take credit for the right jumping on someone who dared to express an alternative opinion. So Bill Donahue wants to take credit for everything. That makes me laugh. It also makes me laugh that they organized this group specifically to only have MAGA cultists on it. And the second someone expressed an alternative opinion, all hell breaks loose. It's fantastic. Couldn't have happened to a worse group of people. Anyway, I think if the Religious Liberty Commission is allowed to just continue as is, though, I mean, the precedent becomes clear. You know what they're going to try to do. They are going to try to pretend that there is an attack on religious liberty, and it's an attack by people like me who support church-state separation against Christians who have all the power. That's what's going to happen. It's going to screw over everybody who's not in their little club there. But that's the whole point of religious freedom, right? Like, it doesn't belong to any one group. If it belongs to only one group, it belongs to nobody. But that's what they're trying to do. That's why these people were appointed to the commission, so they could put out a statement that says religious freedom is under attack and Christians are suffering, giving the Republicans and the Trump administration a reason to implement new measures to harm everybody else. And all of a sudden, Carrie Prejean thought, hey, why don't I express my own opinions? And now she's gone, theoretically. Maybe, we'll see. Okay, I will stop there. What questions we got here? Yes, get the popcorn. It's good stuff. This just happened. I don't know where this is going to go in the next day or two, but I hope the entire board gets dismantled and it'll be glorious. I'd be more nervous about a religious committee, except it's clearly just a cash grab. I don't know where they're getting any cash from. This is a prestige thing. This is I can go to my people and say, I'm part of Donald Trump's Religious Liberty Commission, so I'm special and you should celebrate me. I mean, they're not making money from being on this thing, but they are getting power, especially in right-wing circles. That's what they want. Did you see the travesty that was the congressional hearing today? That was the Pam Bondi hearing about all the Epstein stuff that the Department of Justice is ignoring because it's their people who are in all the Epstein files. All she did was attack Democrats and lick the boots of the Republicans, acting pretty disgusting all the while. Yeah, I mean, Pam Bondi is very much a sycophant and just does whatever Trump wants her to do. As many people besides me have said, she wasn't answering questions to be informative. She wasn't answering questions for the public. She was playing to an audience of one. Donald Trump, everything she did when she's like, hey, why did people go on Epstein? Why did Howard Lutnick lie about never going on Epstein's Island and then say he totally went there recently with his wife and kids and nannies? And her response is, I'm going to make fun of you, the guy asking me this question. And she had a whole burn book of like, here are insults you could throw to various Democrats because she's not a serious person. It's why she was the former attorney general of Florida and not a state where you would have good attorney generals. Attorneys general. Sorry, grammar Nazis. All right, jumping to another question here. Let me, story here. Ooh. By the way, the reason we're doing this on Wednesday this week and next week is just because I have some personal stuff going on Thursday nights for the next couple of weeks, but then I should be back to Thursdays after that. Okay. I have more good news coming out of Oklahoma. It's very weird. I rarely say that once, and tonight I've said it twice. The short version of it, for those of you who like to know where this story is going, is that Oklahoma officials just rejected an application to launch the nation's first taxpayer-funded religious charter school. And if that story sounds familiar, it's because we've done this before. So to understand what the hell just happened now, let me take you back a little bit. Years ago, the Republicans on the Oklahoma statewide charter school board said yes. They gave a stamp of approval to the St. Isidore of Seville Catholic virtual school. And it wasn't a private Catholic school. This is a virtual charter school. And the thing is, because it's not a public school, technically, St. Isidore would not have required teachers to be certified. They would not have to accept openly LGBTQ teachers. They could explicitly promote Catholic doctrine during school hours, which would be fine at a private school. But there was also the possibility that students who got pregnant could be expelled. Trans students could be expelled just for existing. Sex education could be omitted from the curriculum. And this school would not have to take on special needs students. Okay, so this is not a charter school that happens to be Catholic. This is a private Catholic school that wanted public funding, so they said we're a charter school now. And they got a green light from the state board to open up. And that led to a lawsuit because you cannot give taxpayer dollars to a Catholic school. And the Oklahoma Supreme Court eventually stepped in. They shot it down. They said 7-1 decision. They said you absolutely cannot do this. It's a violation of Oklahoma's constitution. And the people at the Catholic school, they appealed that decision. It went all the way to the Supreme Court. But Amy Coney Barrett, I think, knew someone who was working with the Catholic school. So she recused herself from the case. And that left them with a 4-4 deadlock. And what that meant is that the Oklahoma Supreme Court's decision to not allow the charter school to open, that was still in place. So that was wonderful. That was good news. But it meant this is kind of still an open debate over whether you're allowed to have taxpayer-funded religious schools. And now another group in Oklahoma is trying to finish what those Catholics started. Okay, so I talked about this in a previous video back in November, but in November, the charter school board learned that, hey, you're going to get an application soon from the Ben Gamla Jewish Charter School. And this is how the Oklahoma Voice described it at the time. Leading the effort is the National Ben Gamla Jewish Charter School Foundation, whose representative, Peter Deutsch, founded 6 non-religious Hebrew English charter schools in Florida, known as the Ben Gamla Charter Schools. Deutsch, a former Democratic U.S. representative, submitted a letter of intent on November 3rd to apply for charter authorization with the Oklahoma Statewide Charter School Board. A formal application has not yet been submitted for the school, and the board cannot take a vote until that happens. Ben Gamla envisions Oklahoma students gaining a rigorous, values-based education that integrates general academic excellence with Jewish religious learning and ethical development. Okay, so this dude said he's going to submit an application for a Jewish school. And again, you can have those, but why are taxpayers having to fund it? That's the problem here. By the way, the schools he opened in Florida are not the same thing. He opened up secular charter schools in Florida that focused on Hebrew language and culture. But the one he wants to launch in Oklahoma, that one would be like an explicitly religious school in nature. And that was the problem. And in fact, we know he's doing that because he told reporters that when Oklahoma was considering St. Isidore, he traveled to Oklahoma because he wanted advice. It's like scouting out. What is that school doing? Because I want to do that in Oklahoma too. So he was never bothered by the church-state implications of it all. The only problem he had is I don't think he thought there would be a lot of students who would apply to his school. But it didn't really matter, right? You're not doing this because you want to educate students. The only reason you launch a Jewish charter school like this is because you want someone to sue you so you can go to the Supreme Court and whine about it. Because if you can overturn it, think about how this would work. What if the Supreme Court says Oklahoma has no right to say no to your charter school just because it's religious? So it's fine. It's legal. Every private Catholic school in the country would say, we want to be a charter school too, because we want access to public funding for what we do. We can't rely on tuition dollars anymore. It would be a disaster. It would sap government resources across the country. So that's the issue here. And also, the other thing you should know about this Jewish school is that one of the 3 founders is a guy named Brett Farley, who is also a board member for St. Isidore. So the same people who tried to get the Catholic charter school approved are now working with this Jewish charter school to get this one approved. So, not long after the announcement was made, the Attorney General of Oklahoma, he said, I am planning to fight this eventually. Check this out. This is Gentner Drummond, the Attorney General of Oklahoma. He led the legal fight against the Catholic school, contending it would eviscerate constitutional church-state separation. This matter has already been resolved after the state Supreme Court's ruling to prevent taxpayer-funded religious charter schools was upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court earlier this year. Our office will oppose any attempts to undermine the rule of law. Okay, great, fine. One other thing I got to tell you, that Democratic former congressman who was trying to do this, again, this is Peter Deutsch. That guy was a Democrat from Florida from 1993 to 2005, but by 2024, he endorsed Donald Trump. You know why? Because Donald Trump is committed to immigration policy, according to Deutsch, and I kid you not, he said, I support Trump because he supports world peace. All of which is to say, this guy up here is really dumb. Anyway, so he wanted this Jewish school to launch. He submitted the application. And the good news is that the Oklahoma Virtual Charter School Board has finally taken a vote on the matter. And the answer is hell no. They voted against this school. And check this out. This is also from the Oklahoma Voice, which does great reporting. After unanimously rejecting the school, the board voted to seek out private attorneys to handle expected litigation. I would be shocked if there's not a lawsuit filed by Friday, said the board chairperson, Brian Shellum. Yeah, you're definitely going to be sued because, again, like I said, the goal of this school is not to teach students. The goal is to just submit an application so they can get rejected, so they can go to court and file their lawsuit about it. And they haven't filed it yet. It's Wednesday night right now. They haven't filed that lawsuit yet, but it is coming. And check this out. Brett Farley, one of the board members of this new school, he said the board's decision Monday was no surprise. The law is what it is, he told reporters after the vote. We made our best application, and whoops, we made our best application, and now we're off to the courts. The school's founders plan to file a legal challenge in federal court, according to a written statement Farley handed to news media. The prepared remarks reiterate arguments Catholic officials made before the state and U.S. Supreme Courts that religious entities cannot be excluded from a neutral public benefit solely because of their faith-based character. So they are going to sue. It's just a matter of when. I would say, though, like, it's not a fair argument. They're saying if you offer money to these charter schools, you can't reject us just because we're religious, but it's charter schools. You could set rules in place for charter schools. It's not like they're saying atheists are allowed to have charter schools, but you're not. They are public schools. They are supposed to benefit the public. So it's totally legal to say no to a religious charter school. That's why the Oklahoma Supreme Court said it would be illegal to fund it. So I don't get that. But this is also interesting. When the Freedom from Religion Foundation, they wrote a letter to the Virtual Charter School Board urging them to vote against the Jewish school, which you would expect. FFRF doesn't want to see this either. But check this out from their press release, because I was shocked when I saw this in their letter. And I would also say, I don't think the Oklahoma board said no to the Jewish school because of FFRF, but I don't think it hurt. But look at what FFRF says. In a letter to the board last week, the coalition explained the many ways Ben Gamla's proposed school would violate state and federal law by indoctrinating students in a specific religion and discriminating against students, staff, and potentially parents. The groups also pointed to substantial deficiencies in required elements throughout the application, as well as passages that appear to have been copied from other schools' applications and are plainly inapplicable to Ben Gamla. I was like, what the hell are you talking about? Because think about this. Let's say you're behind this Jewish charter school. You know you're only doing this so you could file a lawsuit over it. Wouldn't you want to make sure your application is as perfect as possible? Because you know you're going to have to use this as the baseline when you go to court. Because you want to tell a judge, our application is great, but these awful people in Oklahoma aren't letting us do it. Wouldn't you double check that application to make sure it's perfect? I double check 2-sentence emails I send before I send them off because I'm nervous about making a mistake. These idiots submit a giant application and no one's proofreading it. Here's what FFRF said about the mistakes in this letter. This is unbelievable. The application evinces an overall lack of planning and attention to detail. Several portions appear to be recycled from other charter applications or sources without consideration of their applicability to Ben Gamla. For instance, the application references our current schools in Oklahoma City, but Ben Gamla has no schools in Oklahoma City or Oklahoma. The application also references a set of standards and benchmarks that do not appear to exist. Rather, this reference seems to have been copied and modified from some other source that references the national standards and benchmarks for Catholic schools. Further, the application contains several provisions that make little sense for a virtual school. For example, the application contains a policy detailing when students may leave school for a field trip, a discussion pertaining to lunch or after-school detention, and a policy for transporting service animals to and from school. It's a virtual school. They're on Zoom every day. They don't need any of that. How did that get in the application? In multiple places, the application refers to the statewide charter school board using its old name. And perhaps most concerningly, Ben Gamla's 5-year budget contains enrollment projections that don't match the numbers provided elsewhere in the application. They found the dumbest people to write the application that they are now planning to go to court with, saying, we're victims of religious discrimination. They hate us because we're Jewish. It's like, no, buddy. One, they don't like you because taxpayer dollars should not be funding a religious school. But two, it looks like none of your application sucks. You cheated on the application. They're allowed to say no to you. You're under no obligation to be automatically approved by these people. Wow. So, when the right-wing legal group Beckett responded to getting rejected by that charter school board, they did not mention any of this. Guess what they said in their press release about everything? As you might guess, they only talked about religious persecution. Attorney General Drummond's attack on religious schools contradicts the Constitution. His actions have hung a no religious need apply sign on the state's charter school program, in ignoring years of Supreme Court precedent and leaving religious families out in the cold. We will soon ask a federal court to protect Ben Gamla's freedom to serve sooner families, a right that every other qualified charter school enjoys. His actions have hung a no religious need apply sign. Yeah, buddy, it's a charter school. It's a public school. You don't get to have a religious public school. That's not discrimination. You got to play by their rules. That's how it works. Also, it's not years of Supreme Court precedent, because what the Supreme Court has said, I don't like it, but this is what they've said. Like, if states are giving vouchers to students to go to the school of their choice, some states have said you can use those vouchers at private schools. Now, if they say that, the Supreme Court said, well, then you got to let them go to private religious schools. You can't just say you can go to private schools, but not private religious schools. If you say they can go to private schools, they can go to private schools, even if they're religious. Charter schools, however, taxpayer-funded charter schools are secular. That's not pro-atheism. I just mean secular. So it's not like Oklahoma says public money can go to private schools, but not you guys. They're saying taxpayer dollars, public dollars, go to public schools. So this is not Supreme Court precedents. I'm not a lawyer, but it's not hard to see the faulty logic in what the right wing is saying here. So they're going to file their lawsuit soon, but it should be laughed out of court because they didn't do anything right in setting this up. Like, this has always been a clear attempt to turn public education into a taxpayer-funded battleground for religious indoctrination. They want to exploit some loophole to steal public dollars from the coffers into religious projects that just, they don't have to follow any of the rules of public schools. And that's a problem too. It's never about school choice. It's about destroying the wall of separation between church and state. And I think they thought they could get away with it in Oklahoma. They thought they could get away with it when Ryan Walters was in charge. But Ryan Walters is gone. And Oklahoma, which has one of the worst public education systems in the country, is doing anything it can to try to level up. And this isn't going to help them. This would just siphon money out of the public school, all the public schools. So it's a bad idea. Anyway, I will stop there. What questions we got here? Yay, good news. Good news in Oklahoma, no less. Can't they just homeschool? Yeah, of course they can, but their goal isn't to educate. Their goal is to hurt everybody else. So they want to steal money from public schools. They want to make the public school system worse so that more people decide to homeschool. I mean, it's all part of this bigger right-wing agenda that hates public education. And also, they don't want kids to be smart. If you're smart, you see past all this. You see through what they're doing. Sadly, they don't proofread because they barely go through the motions, assuming this is all bribes and backdoor deals. I really do think there's something to that. I think they just assume that they'll hit a right-wing judge, and a right-wing judge will be like, yeah, sure, you should be able to have your publicly funded private religious school. So why would they take their time and do things the right way? Of course they wouldn't. It goes against everything the right stands for. Remember that name. I bet he's in the files. You're going to have to be more specific than that. Which one are we talking about? But yes, in general. By the way, Deutsch. By the way, if you haven't seen it already, Rebecca Watson, Skeptic, did a really interesting video on the latest Epstein files, the latest released batch of Epstein files, and how much Lawrence Krauss is in them and who else gets implicated in them. I wanted to talk about some of it, and I'm like, you know what? I can't top what she did. It was a really good video. You should go watch it. All right, I'm jumping to another story. I got a couple more here, and then that is all. Okay. I made a video not that long ago about a measles outbreak in South Carolina. And one of the reasons measles is spreading, especially in certain parts of the Bible Belt, are because the most religious people in the country are also the least likely to understand how good vaccines are. There was a measles outbreak that may have originated at Ark Encounter recently. So we've seen this happening. It's really bad. I want to show you this from South Carolina. This is a live look at their measles dashboard, the South Carolina Department of Public Health. And they have over 900 cases of measles right now. And just look at that chart on your left, which says in October of 2025, there were only a couple of cases, but it is skyrocketing ever since, and things are really bad right now. And if you look at this map of the state, like the cluster is up there, 890 cases in Spartanburg County alone. And that is very, very scary. That's too many measles going around. And if people are not vaccinated, that means the virus is more likely to spread. And if it's more likely to spread, there are going to be people, including children, whose bodies cannot handle it, and they will suffer the consequences. And there's one other thing here. Measles cases, look at this chart right here. Measles cases by age group. The biggest group right there, ages 5 to 11. That's about half of all the measles cases. And the other batch is coming from kids 0 to 4 years old. So this is very much everybody getting measles is a kid. And one of the reasons this is happening is not just because measles is spreading and very few people, relatively speaking, are getting vaccinated. So there's no herd immunity getting built. It's that public schools have been told, like, kids don't have to get vaccinated either. If you get a religious exemption, schools have to take it. You could just say, my religion says I can't be vaccinated because Jesus famously hated vaccines. And the state says, yeah, religious freedom, you can do that. And that's part of the reason we are seeing all this. And so, in response to that, this is what a Democrat in South Carolina has been saying. State Senator Margie Bright Matthews has basically sponsored a bill that would require documented MMR vaccination for school and college attendance. You attend a public school or public university in South Carolina, you got to show that you are vaccinated for measles, mumps, and rubella. And it removes the religious exemption for that vaccine, but it does preserve medical exemptions, which makes sense. And this is why you don't want religious exemptions to vaccines. There are some people who, for medical reasons, cannot be vaccinated. But in order to keep herd immunity working, you need everyone else to be vaccinated. But if you allow a religious exemption to the rule, that number just starts to fall, and now viruses spread. So this Democrat is saying, okay, I get that some people can't do it for medical reasons, but we should not be allowing people to say, I don't want the vaccine for religious reasons. Let's not do that. And here's what else she said. Right now, South Carolina is facing one of the most serious measles outbreaks in decades. Measles is not a harmless childhood illness. It is highly contagious and can lead to hospitalization and even death. This legislation is about protecting children, protecting classrooms, and protecting communities with clear, medically grounded standards. And that is such a normal, uncontroversial thing to say. I'll even show you her bill. This is the relevant part of the bill of what she's saying. And I'm going to have to scroll. This is the only version of it I could find. They don't have a good PDF of this. But here's what her bill says. No superintendent, no school board, no principal of a school, no owner or operator of a public or private child care facility may admit as a pupil or enroll or retain a child or person who cannot produce satisfactory evidence of having been vaccinated or immunized, which is a very long way of saying if you run a school, you cannot allow someone in your school unless they've been vaccinated. Fine. And then the other relevant part right here, the Department of Public Health or a local health department shall not grant a certificate of religious exemption for the MMR vaccine. So we're just done with them. We're not going to give them out at all. Great. So it's such a smart thing to do in the wake of a deadly measles outbreak that you would think, who's going to be against this? Who could possibly be against this? And the answer to that, we learned, is the Attorney General of South Carolina, who issued this statement. This is Alan Wilson, the Attorney General of South Carolina. This bill goes too far. Since 2020, we've seen a concerted push to curtail personal liberty in the name of health and safety. Eliminating religious exemptions and mandating medical decisions by force is not who we are as a state or country. The right to be free from compelled bodily intrusion is at the heart of the American experiment. Hold on. The right to be free from compelled bodily intrusion. Republicans want to force women to have babies against their will. That's compelled bodily intrusion. But sorry, they haven't thought that far. Anyway, what else does he say? Government should not substitute its judgment for parents, families, or individual conscience, unless you're a woman, in which case, whatever, we control you. Encouragement is not coercion. Personal freedom and parental rights must come first. As Attorney General, I will always stand for liberty, families, and the Constitution. Oh my God. I will never understand how Republicans hate other humans so much that they just cannot wait to watch babies suffer. We've seen a concerted push to curtail personal liberty since 2020. In 2021, when the COVID vaccine was finally available to everybody, it was perhaps the greatest science miracle, for lack of better words, that they were able to get that vaccine out as quickly as they did, as widely as they did, saving as many lives as they did. It was amazing. And the response to, it's the one thing Trump did, Operation Warp Speed, that he genuinely could take credit for, and you can't even fault him for that. And he has absolutely refused to do it because he has already told his base that vaccines are evil. And I know Dr. Oz said this week that you should definitely get vaccinated. I don't need to hear that. Go tell the dude in your office, RFK Jr., who is telling people they have a choice in the matter, or that they ought to have a choice when it comes to vaccines. Because I know you know this if you're watching this video. The thing about vaccines is I am not just protecting myself when I get vaccinated. I am protecting you when I get vaccinated. And if you care about anyone but yourself, vaccines are a good thing. It is like the simplest thing you could do to help yourself and other people, especially in the face of a deadly virus. And in South Carolina, religious leaders have been pushing this idea that you don't need to get vaccinated. They'll make up whatever rationale they have. I won't get measles. I'm going to pray. That's all the inoculation I need. This is such a horrible thing to say, and I wish I didn't feel this. I wish vaccines only affected the people who didn't take them, because then maybe people would learn the lesson the hard way. But that's not how it works. It's a community experiment. We all have to get vaccinated because that's how vaccines work. We have the evidence to back it up. We have so many decades and decades of evidence that it does work. But you have Republican conservative crazies who refuse to listen to the science, who lie about the efficacy of vaccines. And South Carolina is a generally very conservative state. And so here you have a Democrat who's like, I am pro-life in the sense that I would like to save people's lives. And they're like, shut up. I want freedom. So I want to be able to harm everybody else, including babies, because we're pro-life Christians. That's how we roll. Oh, it's so annoying. This bill's not going to go anywhere because Republicans, but it should. And until that happens, Christians deserve all the blame for what is happening to the babies in South Carolina who are going to suffer from measles for the foreseeable future. And by the way, it's not just South Carolina. You saw that map. It was on the northern edge of South Carolina. Measles doesn't respect state borders. That shit is going to spread. All right, what questions we got here? Oh, caring about others is so woke. You're saying it as a joke, but as we talked about earlier, the right hates empathy. So caring for others is very much a thing they don't want to talk about. It's why they don't want to hear about the Sermon on the Mount. They don't want to hear about Jesus caring for the least of these. They think Jesus is woke. Measles are also spreading in the concentration camps. I did hear that in a lot of the concentration camps, the Trump detention camps for brown people. Yeah, there have been measles outbreaks in there too. And those people don't have access to vaccines or medical care. And again, it's not like Republicans care. The people are brown. You think they're going to do anything about it? Of course not. It's a weird way to go to like and subscribe, but yes. I got one last story for you here, and I just wanted to show you a few images. So give me a second to pull this up. Okay. Maybe this is a short video. I don't know. The Pew Research Center just released a quick snapshot of how white evangelicals are looking at Donald Trump today compared to how they did a year ago when he began his time, the second term in office. And this chart, there's a bunch of them here, but there's some really interesting things here. And check this out. What percentage of all US adults view Trump positively? Right? So, for example, what percentage of all US adults approve of Trump's job performance? You could see on that top line, only 37% of Americans approve of what Trump is doing. But among white evangelicals, it's at 69%. Not nice. But white evangelicals overwhelmingly think Trump is doing a good job. What about supporting all or most of Trump's plans and policies? Only 27% of Americans support Trump's, like, let's go after brown people plans. But 58%, a majority of white evangelicals, support them. Are you extremely or very confident that Trump acts ethically in office? This is the easiest question you could possibly ask because everything Trump does is so comically, wildly corrupt. And 21% of Americans still think he's ethical, but 40% of white evangelicals are falling for it. So what do we learn from all this? White evangelicals are the most gullible morons in the country because here you have the most unethical, incompetent guy in the White House, and they still think he's pretty much awesome. 40% say he's not corrupt. 69% approve of his job performance. Like, how in a bubble do you have to be? I've seen clips from Fox News where people are criticizing Trump, and somehow that still hasn't made it to white evangelicals. So that is disturbing. That is super disturbing that no matter what could Trump do at this point to lose the support of these people. Like, I know people jokingly say it's a cult. I say MAGA is a cult in many ways, but there's your proof right there, right? What's interesting too is those numbers I just showed you are recent numbers, but look at this. Those numbers for white evangelicals specifically have actually gone down from a year ago because at the beginning of Trump's second term in office, 66% of white evangelicals said they support all or most of his plans and policies, but it's gone down to 58%. So, yay, but also way too high. And right over here, who thinks Trump acts ethically in office? 55% thought he did in February of 2025, which is 55% too high. But that's gone down. Now it's 40%, which is still ridiculously high. But I guess there's some silver lining here, right? Like, it means that even among these rabid cult members, there is something that is shifting even in them. And I don't know if it's the Epstein stuff. I don't know if it's seeing his ICE terrorists try to kidnap 5-year-olds and put them in the measles concentration camps or what. Something is causing even white evangelicals to be like, yeah, maybe this guy goes too far in some cases. It's not nothing. It's still way too high. Like, these are the most gullible people in America, and yet even they, some of them, are starting to realize maybe he's not the best. Here's another graph that is interesting. What percentage of Americans say they support all or most of Donald Trump's plans and policies? And this is broken down by various religious groups. Well, check this out. First of all, let's look at the religiously affiliated right over here. Only 13% of atheist, agnostics, and none of the aboves say they support most of Trump's policies. And that's good. Black Protestants know him better than anybody. They know he's wildly corrupt. They don't support what he's doing. I'm very mad that we're getting beaten on the, do you guys recognize Trump's an idiot? We're supposed to be the skeptical ones. We're supposed to be the people who can call out bullshit. And yet, we are not. We should be lower on this list. I'm mad at the nuns for dragging this line up. But the point of this chart is not that. The point of this chart is across the board, every one of these groups has gone down from a year ago to today. And white evangelical Protestants and white Protestants in general have gone down in support for Trump's policies more than other groups have. Like, the slope of the lines are steeper for those two groups. So again, in a way, there is good news here. It means within the span of a year, even some of his most fervent supporters are like, he's kind of bad. Did you all see the Saturday Night Live skit from like the last episode where Ashley Padilla played a mother who confessed to her children that she's starting to think maybe Trump lies? And her kids are like, of course, we've been trying to tell you this for the past decade. And she gets very mad that they're not letting her just speak her truth. It was wonderful. But that's what I think of when I see this. Like, even some evangelicals are starting to figure it out. Here's another graph. Same thing. Confidence in Trump's ethics. Again, I don't understand how every line here isn't just a flat line at 0. Who the hell thinks Trump is extremely or very confident that Trump acts ethically in office? But look at where it's falling the most. White evangelical Protestants. At the beginning of Trump's term, they started at 55% of white evangelicals said they're confident he's an ethical dude, and now it's down to 40. There is not a single religious demographic in the country where a majority of people thinks this guy is ethical. Which, I mean, again, it shows that some of this stuff is breaking through to them. And I think this is the last one right here. Trump approval is down among most religious groups compared with a year ago. What percentage of your people approve of the way Trump is handling his job as president? And let me remove myself from here so you could see the things. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, there we go. It's at the top. I don't need to remove myself at all. So if you look at the gray line right here, this is like the average. This is all U.S. adults. Only 37% of Americans now say they approve of the way Trump is handling his job. And again, 37% approval is very low. It should be lower, but okay. That is very much down from a year ago when it was at 47%. But you go to the top of this chart, to the white evangelical Protestants. 78% of white evangelicals said they support of Donald Trump's handling of his job as president. 78, by the way, is pretty much the percentage of white evangelicals who voted for him in the last 3 elections. And now that number has dipped to 69%. Like in every group, in every religious group here, it has gone down. But it is kind of amazing that even among white evangelicals, Trump has lost nearly 10% in support. And it's not like it's going to get better. I mean, it's not like the Epstein files are going to go away. It's not like he's going to get less cruel to immigrants. The dementia's only setting in further. And look at the people he's surrounding himself by. You think RFK Jr. is making him look good? No, the story of like 2026 is going to be viral outbreaks. You think Pam Bondi is making him look good when she's supposed to be answering questions about Epstein and does like a 5-minute roast of any Democrat asking her a question while ignoring the survivors of Epstein who are standing right behind her? Did you see that picture? So Trump is surrounding himself. JD Vance got booed at the Olympic opening ceremonies. The whole world hates America right now, and I hope they realize just hate our leaders. It's their fault. We're all good. But like Trump's not surrounding himself by anybody making himself look good. And if Democrats can retake the House majority and maybe the Senate majority at the end of the year, then you're going to see more investigations and more of the corruption's going to come out. No matter how hard the right wing tries to spin all this and make Trump look good, it's not working. Trump is not good when he can't control the narrative. And the problem for him and his administration right now is too many people are pissed off, including people in their own camp. And if they can't control that narrative, it's not good for him at all. So the fact that white evangelicals are still the most gullible religious group in the country, very much true. But also, even some of them are starting to realize this guy has problems. So, yay, silver lining. Maybe for now. Figured I would leave you with that one. What questions we got here? It only took 10 years. I know. Every part of me, very much going back to the SNL sketch, every part of me wants to be like, I knew all of this over 10 years ago. Where were the rest of you? Then again, I also thought that about being an atheist. Obviously, you don't get to, everyone's on their own timeline. Not everyone's watching the news all the time. I get that. So I'm glad it happens eventually. But man, look at what we've had to go through to get to the point where even white evangelicals realize maybe this guy's a piece of shit. Better to give the newly questioning a soft landing from us guys. Yeah, I mean, again, I want to have grace. You're right. I want to give them that soft landing. But come on, we've been shouting from the rooftop for 10 years and you've been ignoring everything. I would like to know, I really would like to know from Pew, if they ever asked this, and I don't think they do, what was it that made you white evangelicals realize that you no longer support him? Like, I kind of want to know that from them. Was it Epstein? Was it the cruelty? Which thing was it that did the trick? I don't trust those polls or numbers, but they have to acknowledge the drop. I don't know why you don't trust the polls or numbers. I mean, as much as you could trust any poll to give you reliable information, I will tell you, I trust their methodology. There's a few groups that do really good surveys and stats as much as you can. And they really do, I think, go out of their way. Not just Pew, Gallup does this too. They'll go out of their way to tell you, here's how we're conducting these surveys if you want to know. So I don't buy that first half of it. But yes, what the surveys show, what is hard to ignore, is that there is a drop. And so even when you see surveys from like right-wing pollsters that show support for Trump, and it's always higher than the actual support from every other poll, but even those surveys show a drop over time. And that is interesting to watch because you can't really hide that. And the GOP legislators only look at the evangelical numbers. They consider the Heritage Foundation a reliable, unbiased source. Yeah, and to their detriment, though, because if they really only believe what is being said in their bubble, they're in for a rude awakening. We are now seeing more Republicans say they are planning to retire rather than run for re-election. Some of them doing it mid-session. Like, I think there's one Republican today who said he is going to retire, but he might retire like next month. And Mike Johnson's like, I need your vote. Don't leave now. But they're doing it. Why? Because regardless of which numbers they're looking at, they can see the writing on the wall. It's not good for Republicans. Every special election that we see, even in deeply red districts right now, even small local races, they are showing massive overperformance by Democrats relative to how Kamala Harris did in 2024. Like, they are doing so much better than Democrats did in 2024's election. And if that is some indication of what's to come, Republicans everywhere should be scared. All right, that's it for today. I will see you next Wednesday. I appreciate you coming on tonight. And thank you, Den, for helping out with everything. I can't do this without Den. Remember, you can subscribe to the newsletter at friendlyatheist.com. Go do that. And you can support this channel at patreon.com/Hemant. I appreciate it. I think that's it. Have a good night, everybody. See you next week.